Can you guys hear me okay? Can I get a thumbs up if you're hearing me? Okay, awesome. Thank you. So welcome. I'm glad to see everybody tonight. I do apologize for changing the meeting date and time. I know that just causes complete disruption, not only for y'all, but it also does for me. But we are working on a major project with LSU in Baton Rouge. And as a part of that work and partnership, we're going to be rolling out a bunch of new programs and things like that in February of next year. So February 2022. God, that sounds crazy to even say that we could be in the year 2222. With that being said, we're having to do a lot of online meetings. And so I don't get a ton of notice on those, but I do have to participate. So like I said, I'm sorry for changing it, but you know, hopefully we won't have to do that again. But I already know we should be okay for next week, Wednesday night's normal meeting date and time. But then the following week, which is week 6 and our actual last Zoom meeting, we will I have to do that one on Thursday. So next week, Wednesday at 5:30, then the following week, that'll be on Thursday at 5:30. And like I said, hopefully that'll be the last time we have to do any changes. And honestly, we're finishing the course. So I want to try to do 3 things with you guys tonight. I'm going to go back over the assignment that's due this Sunday. So that's going to be the crosswalk and the PowerPoint requirements. I thought we talked about this enough that everybody was okay, but I'm still getting a ton of questions. So I'm going to do that pretty briefly because I've got a lot of other stuff that I want to kind of walk you guys through tonight. Also, I have completely opened up the rest of the course. So if you've gone into Moodle sometime today, you should see that I've opened weeks 5, 6, and 7. So just know that if you are one of those people that kind of likes to work a little bit ahead, it's all open for you to do. So I want to walk you through some of those assignments as well tonight as time permits. And then, of course, I do want to talk to you about some information that I think will help to sort of solidify the work that we're doing through the professional learning communities. Okay, so knowing that I'm going to cover those 3 things, are there any other questions that aren't related to one of those 3 things before we get started?
I have a question about the reflective essay. Are you going to be speaking to that, or should I wait?
No, go ahead, Tiffany.
Okay. So I already did mine and submitted, but I might need to resubmit.
Okay.
On the reference, were you supposed to do like a reference page, or was it supposed to be just like the one that we did prior to, without any cover or reference page or anything like that? Just have the references at the bottom and all, like you did last time?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, okay. You don't ever have to do a cover page or an abstract for me. And you can list your references at the bottom. That's fine. Just make sure that, you know, you do have in-text citations and that you reference at least 3 different sources.
Okay. Okay, great. Okay. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Okay, any other questions?
I have a question about the rubric for the PowerPoint.
Yes.
It says that we need graphics. Is that on every slide for every standard? Just a few graphics?
No, ideally, you know, it's great when you can include a graphic or a chart or something to kind of explain what you're doing, but you don't have to. I'm not going to penalize you in terms of grades if you don't have any graphics. So that's the least of my concerns. It's really more about, I want you to be able to adequately explain and justify what you put in the PowerPoint, more so than it is going to be about graphics and making it really fancy and, you know, all that kind of stuff. I'm not interested in that.
And what about the word count? It says 10 to 30 words per slide.
You know, that's just sort of a standard PowerPoint rule because some people will try to put on a PowerPoint, they'll try to treat it like each slide is like an essay. So, you know, it's just kind of a guideline. It's not like I go through and count the words, but just don't, you know, trust me, I don't have time to do that. I have 65 students in this class and I'm doing I'm actually reviewing school ambassador applications for the U.S. Department of Ed, and then I have my real job. So trust me, I'm not going through and, you know, counting words. Just make sure that it's not like 2 words on a slide. You guys are going to be fine. And then, and like I said, don't make each slide, you know, a 5-paragraph essay kind of stuff.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question if we do it in a video form.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so when we submit it, and I'm sorry, I'm at a livestock show and it's loud, so there's probably really crazy stuff going on in the background.
That's awesome.
And that's
I'm
why I've got my
excited.
mask, because I'm, I'm not at my house. Can we submit everything, the reference page, everything will go in all in the, I lost my train of thought because that music was so loud. When we submit it, it'll let us submit several things at one time.
Yes, it should. I think I set the number of the number of attachments that you can upload is like 20. Please don't upload 20 things to me.
I'm not, no, might be 3.
Okay, yeah, so you should be fine. But I will tell you, sometimes Moodle doesn't like video links.
So maybe email it.
Pardon me?
Maybe email it.
Yeah, just email it to me, or if you want to do like it through Google or however it's easiest, just send it to me. Because I know sometimes too there's limits on like an MP4 or whatever file, that your email maybe will let you send, or our email will let me accept. So
okay,
however you get it to me is fine.
Okay.
All right. Any other general questions before we kind of move on?
I have one more question. I'm sorry.
No,
For
that's okay.
our group did our PowerPoint and our crosswalk on Google Docs and Google Slides. So do you want us to download that as a PowerPoint and download it as a Word doc, or just submit the link to you?
Yeah, just send me the shareable link. I love Google. I wish we would switch to Google personally at LSUS. So yeah, just send me that shareable link and I'll pull it up. I don't want you to download anything that you don't have to.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Anybody else? Going once? Okay, I'm going to move you guys over to my other screen. So just kind of bear with me. It may look like it's weird, but give me 1 second here. So let's talk about I've been working on degree checkouts all day. So I've got like a million files open. Let me close some of this out. Okay, so let's talk for a second here. Let me get back to Moodle about the assignment this week. Hang on, sorry. It's logged me out as usual. So let me log back into Moodle here. I'm just gonna close you out. That'll be faster and easier. Sorry, guys. Thought I had everything up and ready, and I did, but like I said, it logged me out when I wasn't expecting it to. Come on, computer. Here we go. All right, so I'm going to Moodle. Okay, and I need to log in again. Okay. I'm sorry, guys. I promise I don't have COVID. It's I have bad allergies and this craziness with this weather where, it's like summer one day and then the next day it's, ridiculously cold again. It's just getting to me. All right, so I'm going to go to module 3. So let me pull up the actual assignment. There it is. Okay, and let me do a screen share. Okay, share screen. Here we go. Okay, can y'all give me a thumbs up? Can you see my screen okay? Okay, awesome. All right, so let's look first at what you're supposed to do. So, my page is going to look slightly different than yours, obviously, because as the instructor, I see a different thing. You're not going to have this grading summary information. But what you're going to do first is you're going to start with the crosswalk. And guys, do not make this harder than it needs to be. This is a really pretty simple assignment, but I think some of you guys are making it like really complex. So just take a deep breath. I'm not looking to penalize anybody here. This is just a pretty standard sort of thing that most schools are doing in terms of breaking down or unpacking standards. So if you're still confused about it, you can just do a simple Google search and type in unpacking standards and you will get a ton of information. But let's look at this document again. Now, I went over this last week in the recording of the video, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on it, okay? All right, so you're supposed to unpack or complete the crosswalk for a total of 6 standards, okay? 2 standards must be national, and I've listed for you the sources. So people are like, where do I find the standards? Read the directions. They're right there in front of you. So you're going to pick 2 standards from these sources, And if you don't know where to find them, literally do a Google search. That's what I do. I just go to Google and I type in ISSLC standards and I get a list, okay? You can do the same thing with the Louisiana Leader Teacher Standards, etc. So you're going to choose 2 standards, and you'll notice I give you an example right here, okay? So this is an example from the ISSLC standards. And I also posted in the instructor virtual office, I posted some additional links where you can find national standards. I think I gave you 4 more links. So you can go look at the instructor virtual office and find them there. So I'm going to do a Google search and I'm going to pick 2 standards. Okay, you can do them both from the same source, or you can choose to do, I want to do one from the ISSLC, or I want to do one from the Louisiana Leader Teacher Standards. Doesn't matter to me. So here's the example. So this is ISSLC Standard 1. Okay, so let me switch back over here.
I'm sorry, Tracy, we're not seeing that screen. We're still seeing your Moodle screen.
Okay, that's okay because I get here, I'm going to switch screens anyway, so give me 1 second here. Okay, are y'all seeing a Google screen now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's what I want you to see for the moment. All right, so one of the standards is the ISSLC and standards. That's all I have to type in. If I could spell, that would be even better. Thankfully, Google corrects me all the time. So you will see right here, this is where the standards are, okay? So I'm choosing to work on standard 1. So here's the first standard. A school administrator is an educational leader who promotes the success of all students by facilitating the development, articulation, implementation, and stewardship of a vision of learning that is shared and supported by the school community, okay? So if you've never had to do an unpack a standard, it's pretty simple. And it's driven by punctuation and grammar, okay? So, you know, you guys are probably all too young, but back in my day, we used to have to, in English classes, diagram sentences. So we learned a lot about what the subject was and the verb and the object and the direct object and all that. So I'm going to take you back to your grammar stuff. If you still don't understand, then I'll try to simplify this as much as I can. All right, so the first thing I'm going to look for is the verb. So what is it that we are asking, or what is it that this standard, let me rephrase that. What is this standard telling you to do? Well, it's telling you that you're going to promote and you're going to facilitate, okay? So those are your 2 verbs. You don't have to list both, you can list one. So what am I going to facilitate? Well, every time there's a comma, that's a separate standard, or separate, what's the word I'm trying to say? A separate standard or separate action that I need to be handling. So I'm going to facilitate the development. I'm going to facilitate the articulation. I'm going to facilitate the implementation, and I'm going to facilitate the stewardship. Now, so I'm facilitating development, articulation, implementation, and stewardship of what? Well, generally a direct object has the word of in it. So I am going to facilitate the development, articulation, implementation, stewardship of a vision of learning, okay? So let's go back now to the actual template, and let me see if I can get it to share with you guys. So I'm going to stop sharing there, and let me do a reshare on that. No, that's not what it's called. That's what I call it. Okay, so can you guys see now the crosswalk? Okay, awesome. Thank you. All right, so you'll see where I broke this down. So what am I supposed to be doing? I'm facilitating what I just said, the development, articulation, implementation, and stewardship of a vision of learning. And how am I doing that? I'm doing that by sharing and supporting. Okay, so all I'm doing is basically breaking down that particular standard. Okay, and like I said, if you don't know what the difference is between a verb, an adjective, and an object, just kind of follow this example. They're all standards are written pretty consistently in the same format. So like I said, it's usually pretty easy. And I don't get too hung up on, oh gosh, that they put the verb in the adjective column. That's not the point. The point is to understand that when you're teaching this particular standard, you are making sure that you're covering each element of the standard. Then over here, it talks about the type of PLC. So this is where you get to be creative. So who do I think would be best suited to do this? Well, in my opinion, it would be an instructional team. You could say it should be the administrative team. You can say it should be the central office curriculum and instruction department. That's not the point here. It's the idea of we've broken down the standard into teachable parts and who's going to handle that. So then what would I want that particular group to do to make sure that this standard is taught and mastered? Well, for me, I think if you're going to be talking about a vision of learning, the first thing you've got to do is, as a PLC, you've got to create a process to develop the vision and mission, okay? There's not necessarily a right or wrong answer, guys. And I think sometimes as students, we get caught up in the idea that there's only one right answer. In my classes, there are a million right answers because it's really all about what you think and then how you justify your particular thought, okay? So you're going to do 2 of those. Then you're going to do 4 student academic standards, okay? So again, Google search. So let's look at, so in this case, I chose, this is from the Louisiana Learning Standards. This happens to be a kindergarten one, and it's pretty simple. Students will be able to classify various foods into the major groups, okay? So here's my example. There's my verb. What are we asking the students to do? Classify. What are they classifying? Foods into the major groups. And what kind of foods? Various. I know this is a kindergarten standard, so who do I think is best equipped to address this standard? I think it's the kindergarten team. And what would I want them to do to address the standard? Well, in my mind, they need to design a unit, okay? So don't make this harder than it needs to be. So you're gonna list your standards right here on the template. There's plenty of spaces, so you're gonna do a total of 6, and they go right here only on this page, okay? Let me enable editing so it'll let me actually move this, okay? The next 2 pages 2 through 8 are simply examples. So if, people always ask me for a model or an example, I have given you a million of them. You don't do a thing with these. If you understand how to do this page and you feel really confident about it, or you've done this in your school, I wouldn't even look at pages 2 through 6. If you're one of those people that the more models you see, the easier the assignment becomes, then I would spend some time just kind of reviewing these. But I've given you 2 examples. Here's the standards for national. Student standards, you probably have them in your own curriculum. You can use them from your curriculum for your school. Or you can do a simple, like I said, a Google search. You can do Common Core. You can go to Texas and say you want to look at the Texas student standards. The only reason I bring up Texas is because they don't use Common Core. You can do the same thing with Louisiana. So you'll notice that again, look, I've given you some, I don't even remember where some of these are from, truthfully, but they're kind of all over the map. So any students, oh, I have some from Idaho. I think I also have some in here too from Minnesota, even though I don't list it. But these are, again, just examples, guys. You don't have to do a thing with them. Okay, so questions about that part of this? Are we good?
Professor, I have a question quickly. So
Sure.
when we go ahead and we complete the crosswalk, would you like us to delete the other pages, or would you like us to make a fresh new page?
Either one's fine. I know that all I'm going to look at is the first page. So, if you're one of those people that it bothers you that there's other pages, you're welcome to delete them. I don't want you to take the time to recreate the template unless you just have the ability to extract that one page out.
Okay.
But either one's fine. Even if you just complete the first page and then you send me, all of it, that's fine too.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so let's talk real quickly about the PowerPoint. So hang on again, guys. Let me get back to Moodle and I'm going to do a share. Close that out. And this is week 3 and we're already there. Whoops, sorry. stop that. So I'm trying to stay in student mode and it keeps skipping around on me. Okay, so let me look at for just a second here, the directions. Okay, so let me pull this up. I'm going to stop share. I'm actually not sharing right now, so we should be okay. Just got to find you guys again. There you are. Okay, so let me share again one more time. Okay, so you should be looking at the group assignment case study number 1. It's due Sunday. Okay, thumbs up. You guys good? See it? Okay, awesome. All right, so the questions are pretty simple. We've been talking a lot about what is the purpose of a PLC? How is that defined? So you've got a total of 7 questions. So when you get to question number 4, you have 2 options to answer this question. You can choose a different standard than the ones that you put on your crosswalk. Personally, I would choose one off my crosswalk because I've already unpacked it. I've already done all the work. So what you do to answer question number 4 is you choose a standard and tell me from that standard. So let's say we're going to use my kindergarten standard about classifying food into various groups. And you're just going to tell me how a professional learning community would address that. So again, it might be that kindergarten team. And the first thing they're going to do is we have 5 things that we want to accomplish in that PLC. We want to unpack and understand the standard. We want to design a unit. We want to design our formative and summative assessment. We want to create a lesson plan, and we might want to create some exemplars as far as what we're expecting our students to do. Or instead of that, we may want to design some really high leverage, very strong instructional, what's the word I'm looking for? Instructional tasks for the students to do. You don't have to list 5 things. I just did that as an example. You can list 3. But just again, tell me, pick one standard off your template or another standard you want to talk about and tell me what kind of a professional learning community and how are they going to address this, okay? So in number 5, it's basically sort of redundant because, like I said, here you're picking the standard and you're telling me which learning community, and you're basically repeating that. The only difference is that I want you to be a little bit more specific. So if you say the kindergarten team is going to address your standard, then you may want to tell you do need to tell me who is on that team. So you could say there's a kindergarten team leader, and then there's 3 other kindergarten teachers. And maybe you might want to include the assistant principal sits on this, or the special education teacher, or the instructional coach, or whoever, okay? Then you're going to be even more specific and tell me how the PLC will meet these standards. So again, remember those 5 things that I just named off? That would be the kind of stuff that you would put here. And then finally, how do you know if that particular professional learning community is effective or not? Well, for me, I'm going to look at the formative and the summative assessment results. And if we meet the criteria that we've set on those formative and summative assessments, that's going to be my measure to determine if the PLC is effective. Okay, so real quickly, I'm going to run through it one more time. Number 4, choose a standard, put it on there, and basically that takes care of number 4. Number 5, gets more specific. Tell me what kind of PLC is going to be most effective and who is making up that particular PLC. Number 6, tell me what activities the PLC is going to do to make sure our students, if we're using a student one, if we're using a teacher or leader standard, what are we going to do to make sure that our constituents meet these particular standards? And then finally, how are you going to know if the PLC is effective? Okay. It may be that I'm teaching, and I do teach them in our program. So one of my metrics always is I track and watch our SLLA test results. So that tells me if the work that I've been doing, and we break it down by objective and by content and then by course, tell me if I'm being effective or not. Okay? Makes sense. Okay, I see some thumbs up. All right, any questions, guys? Because if you have a question, somebody else is probably thinking that too. Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
About the video. Just I guess for clarification.
Sure.
Do we have to have, like, if we're doing a video, do we have to have like graphics along with it, kind of like I guess a digital presentation, or is it more like I guess like I'm presenting the information and then I can kind of walk you through it, if that makes sense?
Yeah, no, guys, I'm not expecting like a documentary or anything like that. It's really like if you and I are sitting down and having a face-to-face conversation. Most people honestly sit and they talk through each one of the questions. So like I said, it doesn't have to be anything complex, guys. I'm not looking for, I'm not judging you on your presentation as much as I am. Do you understand the content and can you effectively apply it? And when you do that application level, can you justify how and why you chose those particular answers? Make sense?
Got it. Thanks.
You're welcome. Okay, anybody else before I get us back to looking ahead just a little bit?
Question, Miss Tracy.
Yeah, hey, Thomas.
If you're working in a group,
Uh-huh.
I think you had mentioned we all upload the same project. Could you review that with us real quick?
Yeah, so let's say that, yeah, Thomas, I'm going to assume if you're working in a group, you're more likely to do the PowerPoint than you are the video. So each person would just upload their, the same, it's going to be what am I trying to say? Sorry, let me back up. I'm like got a million things going through my head at once tonight. Each one of you is going to upload into the assignment the crosswalk and the PowerPoint. And, I understand because you're working in a group that, 5 people may submit the exact same thing. That's okay. Just make sure that when you submit that you put everybody's name on there so I can just, because I try to be very consistent. So I'm just going to pick on people. So let's say that Stacy, Kathy, and Ashley are a group. Make sure you put all 3 names on there because the way that I grade then is I will do, Stacy's first, then I'll look at Kathy's and I'll look at Ashley's, and all 3 of you will get the same grade and the same feedback.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else, guys?
Yeah, one more question. It doesn't matter if it's a student standard or an adult standard, right? Just a standard.
Just a standard for the PowerPoint.
Okay.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Whatever you choose, it's fine with me.
Okay.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Does the crosswalk need to be separate from the PowerPoint, or can it be included in the PowerPoint?
Oh, that's a good question. You could probably include it in the PowerPoint. The only, I guess, hesitation that I have is that sometimes when you try to embed that, it's so small, it makes it really hard to read. So just make sure that if you do that, that you set the parameters such that I can expand it or zoom in so that I can actually read it. That's
Okay.
my only concern.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else? Going once, going twice?
I have a question, Ms.
Sure.
Tracy. Edit the template and write on that particular one, or create our own?
You can actually write directly on that one. You should be able to edit with no problem. If you have a problem, just email me and I'll send you a new version.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Sarah's asking in the chat room, is it okay if we make the template more than one slide? Yeah, of course. Yeah, that would definitely make it easier to see. Sure. Okay, anybody else? Okay, so let me get back to Moodle and I'm going to do another share screen here. Give me 1 second, guys. Hang on, I gotta find you again. There you are. Okay, so we're going to share my screen, which is this one, I think. Okay, yeah, I don't know why it went to competencies. So I don't have to worry about that. Okay, so we've talked a lot about what's due in week 4. Let me just show you real quickly again. So what do you have to do this week? You have a reflection that's due. You have from week 3, the case study, which we've been talking about. You'll actually submit it, even though it's not due until week 4, you'll submit it under week 3. Then I also have opened up for you the midterm, okay? This is an individual assignment, guys. It's not something you can do with a partner. Trust me, it's like super rigorous and super hard. So, plan on spending like, 48 hours just doing this one. Some of you haven't looked at this or you'd understand I'm joking. It's really not that bad. It's pretty simple, actually. So what you're going to do is I want you to create a graphic organizer, an informational page. You can use a picture or you can do a video. Do not send me more than one page if you choose the graphic organizer, the informational page, or the picture. I just noticed I have a typo in there. I have to go and fix. So all you're doing is you're answering 5 questions. So I've learned the following about PLCs. My questions I need answered are the most important and helpful thing, blah, blah, blah. So really pretty simple assignment. So like I said, you have a choice. You can create a graphic organizer. You can just do an informational page. You can create a picture, or you can do a video. And quite honestly, the video does not need to be 2 to 3 minutes. You could probably answer these 5 questions in about a minute, minute and a half, okay? So very simple, okay? And it's not due until the 21st, okay? Questions about the midterm?
You say graphic organizer. Does it matter if it's like circles and the circles aren't like no circles or arrows? Like it can be kind of cutesy.
Yeah.
Like I like to mess around with like Adobe Photoshop and all that kind of stuff. So I've downloaded some things, but I've been nervous that it's not the right look.
There are a million. Stacy, I love that you can do that in Photoshop. I may have to get you to do a tutorial for me because I'd love to know how to do that.
I'm still playing around, but I was from before I was going to be a teacher days.
Yeah, there's a million graphic organizers out there. And so, yeah, I mean, that's why I try to make this assignment pretty, not a lot of questions. Just have fun with it. Yeah, I'm not looking for a bubble map, or if you know about thinking maps, or a flow chart, or, a Venn diagram. I'm not looking for anything specific. Just send me what you got.
So can we submit it as like a JPEG?
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay.
Yeah, you can do it as a PDF. You can do it as a Word document, a JPEG, an MP4, I think. I don't know. Pretty much anything. If I can't open it, I will just email you and let you know that, and we'll figure out how you can get it to me.
So for those of us who are not like Stacy and very creative with all that fun stuff, just as long as we have like a 1-pager with some boxes and such, we're good, right?
Yeah, or I will, Tiffany, I'll be honest with you. I've had students before who do a 1-page and they list question number 1, and then they do bullet points, question number 2, bullet points, or a quick sentence. Like I said, you don't have to make this creative unless you just want to. It's really up to you.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions about this one before I push us onward here? Okay, so let's look real quick at week 5, which I opened today. So I'm not going to walk you through everything, but in week 5, you have a discussion forum. Okay, so you're used to doing those. This is your second one, I believe. No, your third one. I'm sorry. So then you're also going to look at and do the final exam. So let me stop sharing. I've got to get this. Oh, hang on. I'm going to let it actually be here. All right. So this is because it is part of your final exam. You can't work with a group on this one, but it's not due until February 27th. So you've got some time, certainly, to work on this. Just ignore this date here. I have no idea why these random dates pop up. Maybe it's because the first time I ever taught this course was in August of 2018. I don't know. Just ignore that. But let me pull up the PLC plan real quick. So let me stop sharing. Get this back up here for you. Come on, guys. Got to move you over again. Okay. All right. So again, what you're going to do in this particular assignment is it's pulling together everything that you've done. So this is part 1 of your final exam, okay? So there's 3 parts, but it hopefully will make sense. So I've given you a template again, and you're going to create an action plan. So for those of you that have taken other classes with me in the past, you're like, oh yeah, she always makes us do an action plan. And this is actually the assignment that we'll use and submit when we have our accreditation visit that shows you that, you can apply what we've done. So again, I'll go over this more in depth next week, but just to give you a quick overview, it's pretty simple. So tell me about a PLC that you're creating. Okay, you're doing that in this week's assignment. Tell me who the leader is. Tell me who the members are, who might be a subject matter expert. You're going to write an objective. Then you're going to walk through and explain each one of these. Okay, like I said, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail tonight because the assignment's not due until the 21st. And I want you guys to really focus on finishing what you need to do before that. Okay, but for those of you that want to work ahead, it is uploaded, downloaded, uploaded, whatever. And again, you're just applying the information that you're learning, okay? Now, in terms of like things like the objectives and stuff, in week 5, I teach you how to do SMART goals. So if you've never done them, they're pretty simple. So like some of this, like I said, we haven't covered yet, but just to give you a preview, okay? I'm gonna stop sharing that and let me get back over here to Moodle so I can share that with you guys. Sorry, I wish there was an easier way to do this, but it just doesn't allow me to. So like I said, you can walk through, there's a discussion forum, and then I give you the first case study. There's our Zoom meeting information. And then some of this won't make sense until we actually have the presentation next week. So when it talks about the VOS evaluation form, you're like, what is that? Don't worry about it yet. Week 6. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just looking over that assignment that you were just talking about, and when it talks about objective, I'm trying to generalize this in my head because I've never looked at teacher leader standards before this semester. And so when you think about the 4 questions of a PLC, is every PLC supposed to be addressing one of those 4 questions?
There's 2 schools of thought on that. If you were to ask Rick Dufour, who was sort of the creator, I guess, of the PLC model, he would say yes. In a PLC, you should always be addressing what do we need students to know? How are we going to, teach it? How do we know if they've learned it? And then what do we do if they don't learn it? So you can do that with teacher standards. So you would have to kind of put yourself more in a position of the leader. So for example, as part of my role as an instructor in the Department of Education at LSUS, I have to teach those standards. So, I try to make sure in my course that I address those questions. Does that kind of help? There are other people that say that that's too narrow of a scope and that the PLC should be working on things beyond that. And if I can remember where I put it, I think it's here. Let me show you a graphic that may help you with that. Let me see if it's going to pop up for me. No, it's not here. I think it may be in week, I thought it was in week 6. Maybe it's in week 5. Sorry, guys. You'd think I'd remember this. I just looked at all this today again. Give me 1 second. Sorry.
I just only know PLCs as, luckily at my school, we do PLC, grade level PLCs, and we look at the assessment and we hit those 4 questions every single week, but I don't know how else. I feel like there's a broader scope that I'm not understanding. So maybe there's some resources in the upcoming weeks that might explain that a little bit more.
Yeah, and like I said, if I can find this silly graphic, I was going to show it to you because it really, I love it because it takes on 1 page. It tells you all the different things that an effective PLC should be looking at. So, like I said, bear with me, guys. I'm sorry. I can't remember where I put it. Dang it. Okay, well, I will tell you what. I'll post it in the news forum for you because I don't want to waste your time while I look for it. But it's a really nice graphic that, like I said, just kind of tells you everything. No, that's not it. Okay, so anyway.
I'll be looking for it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, anything else, guys, on this particular one? All right, so then in week 6, you have a lot of reading to do, sorry. And then you've got several videos to watch. Then your assignment is, this is part of your final, it's writing and using SMART goals. So there's lots of exemplars and things like that in there. And then in week 7, you will do the final exam, which is the last part. I told you there are 3 parts. We don't have a Zoom meeting. And then you have a quick discussion forum. Okay, so kind of see where we're headed. So you're submitting case study number 1 this week. Then you have the midterm, which is due the 21st. Then you have your final exam, which is not due until the 27th. Okay, all good? And like I said, I'll go over in much more detail next week, and then in week 6, the assignments. Okay. All right. Well, if you guys are good with that for now, anyway, let me go ahead and pull up our presentation for tonight. Sorry, guys, I'm going to close out all these windows real quick. All right. Where are we? There we are. Okay. So let me share one more time. Okay, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this tonight because obviously we have very little time left. But one of the things that I oftentimes get asked about in a PLC is, what do you do when there's conflict? You know, what do you do when you're dealing with a difficult team member? Well, I wish there was a magic bullet that I could just give you that you could address this with us being team members, but unfortunately, it's a little more complex than that. So conflict often results from change. So if you're in one of those schools that's already doing PLCs, then hopefully you're past this point. But in my experience, even in schools that have been doing PLCs for a long time, there are oftentimes that one person who just either doesn't participate, they're passive aggressive in the PLC, or they're downright obstinate and can be challenging. So understand, and we talked about this a little bit before, that when we're changing something, okay, so let's say that you're starting a PLC from scratch, or you're trying to refocus your PLC. Know and understand going in that 70% of organizational changes fail. Why do they fail? Well, there is a school of thought out there that says that it has to do with IQ, EQ, and CQ. So what does that mean? Well, we obviously know what IQ is. So, you know, you're dealing with teachers or leaders or whatever. So these are all people with college degrees. So IQ is usually not going to be your problem. These are people who are, you know, intelligent and smart. EQ deals with the emotional side of things. So, you know, when you're dealing with change, a lot of times the first reaction from people is fear. I think we've all experienced that with the COVID issues when they first started happening, and, you know, we're having to do lockdowns and quarantines and all this stuff. There was a lot of fear. Now, what I noticed was for people who maybe have been around a little bit longer, who have a lot of skills and things like that, that fear was overcome much more quickly than maybe younger people, and I'm stereotyping right now, but you know, maybe younger people who didn't have that experience. So it was very, very scary to them. So emotional intelligence matters. The other piece that researchers tell us that can affect change is called change intelligence. Well, you know, I worked in both the Irving school districts and the Dallas school districts in Texas. I also started my career in private school in Highland Park. So if you know anything about the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, I worked in a very affluent private school. Then I went to Dallas ISD and I worked with students from poverty and in an urban environment. Then I went to Irving and continued to work with students who lived in poverty in a very urban environment, and lots of students who were second language learners. So, you know, one of the things that I'll never forget, the superintendent asked me in Irving when I was interviewing for a position there. He asked me, he said, you know, we were talking about goals and, you know, what kind of my aspirations were, I guess. And he asked me, he said, do you ever want to be a superintendent? And I told him emphatically no. And he asked me why. He said, I'm really curious. And I said, well, you know, I'm coming from the Dallas School District. We change superintendents every 2 to 3 years. I don't want to be in a role or a job where, you know, my life cycle in a position is only 2 to 3 years. You cannot accomplish the kinds of things that need to happen in a 2 to 3 year period. So I think that I have a pretty high change intelligence, only because I was forced to. Like I said, we change superintendents every 2 to 3 years and completely would change directions of what we were doing. We also need to remember too that the pace of change is increasing exponentially. You know, with all the advancements in technology and certainly with COVID and opening schools, closing schools, all of that, we're having a lot of change. So one of the ways that we can lead change more effectively is to understand it. So one of the things that, you know, that brain research has told us that we have to understand going in when we're dealing with change, that for a lot of people, change equals pain. Now, some people love change. I'm one of those people. I love change. I love new challenges and new opportunities. But I am sort of the outlier as opposed to the norm. So how do we help people to not equate change and pain? We have to either fix the pain, avoid the pain, or move beyond it, okay? So I'm not gonna walk you through all of these, but let's just kind of look at this scenario. So we need to change the way sales are processed in our business. So what do? We call a meeting, we create a plan, and we meet with the sales team and unveil the change in the plan. So that is not the right way to do it, because we didn't work on buy-in. We didn't acknowledge the pain that people were feeling. We didn't allow people to have input and all of that. So I think a lot of times when people are looking at change, we think that resistance, it's really not that people are being obstinate or difficult, but we as leaders aren't giving them what they need to understand it, to want it, or to be able to do it. So I used to tell my principals all the time that they had to be the best used car salesman in town, because a lot of times they were having to sell change. So how do you do that effectively? So change intelligence tells us that the first thing you have to do is engage the heart. You have to enlighten the head, and then you have to equip the hands. So what does that look like? So one of the things that struck me when I was a high school principal, and I was at my first graduation, and, you know, I'm standing on the stage and I'm shaking the hands of, you know, 450 seniors walking across the stage. And there were students that I thought, oh my gosh, I have no idea who this is. I know nothing about them. I couldn't tell you whether they were graduating in the top 25% or they were the graduate who was, you know, number 450 on the list. And it really bothered me. And so I started thinking about what was wrong in our school that we didn't know who these students were. So we did a quick activity in a faculty meeting where I literally put on a note card the names of every senior who was going to be graduating that year. So, and then I taped them around the cafeteria. And I had the teachers, they had to go up there and write something personal they knew about every student. And it couldn't be something like, oh, has a nice smile, or always comes to class prepared. It had to be something about them personally. And so out of a faculty of 250, you would think that we would all know at least something about 450 students. So when we were done, I had everybody stand back and we looked at the number of cards that didn't have a thing on them. And through that exercise, I was able to engage the heart, because we realized, wow, that's really sad that nobody here knows anything personal about this student. So you have to find a way to engage the heart. So then we started talking about, do we need to know students personally, and what is it that looks like in action? So that's when we began to look at research, look at best practices, to brainstorm. So we were enlightening the head. So then we had to decide, how are we going to accomplish this goal that we want every student to graduate college and career ready, so that they can live and, you know, have a fulfilled life. We had to make sure that we knew something personal about those students, and every student was involved in at least one campus activity. So we created a plan to do that. It included things like everybody was assigned a student or 2 or 3 to mentor, that we created ways for every student to be involved, etc. So when we implemented this change, it went really well because we had managed to successfully go through those 3 steps. But if you don't do that, then you're going to have some problems, okay? And if you don't do that, we get conflict. And I will tell you, conflict is hard to manage. It is normal. And a lot of times it's very, very complex. So let's skip over a bunch of these. So how do you handle conflict? Oftentimes we focus on the person who's causing the conflict, when in reality we should be focusing on how we choose to respond. So if you don't have the skills or the knowledge to manage the situation, we let our emotions take over and we will respond not maybe the way we want to, but the way we're most comfortable. Okay, so there's an example. Okay, so there's a lot of different ways we can handle conflict. So 2 researchers come to mind, Kenneth Thomas and Ralph Kilman, and they tell us there's 5 main ways to deal with the conflict, and that we all have our own personal preference, but we need to identify the root cause of the conflict first, and then we can employ one of these 5 styles, and it really can make a huge difference. Okay, so there are 5 conflict resolution styles. One is competing, when your goal is to win. Collaborating, the goal is to find a win-win solution. Compromise, might find the middle ground. Avoiding, so you delay, or accommodating to yield. There are times when, as a leader, whether you're a teacher leader or campus principal or central office leader, you have to win. Let me give you a good example. So I was an elementary principal and there was this teacher. I will tell you, I did not like him because I thought he was awful to children. And so he came up to me with this idea about dealing with some of our second language learners and how we were going to better support them. And his idea was to basically group them by IQ. Well, I had to win that conversation because that was the wrong thing to do for kids. And it was completely contrary to what we knew was effective. So I had to win that conversation. So I had to think about, how am I going to do this? Other times we're going to be able to collaborate or compromise or even avoid. So what does that look like in action? So the first thing you have to do is assess. You have to know your options. Okay. I had a teacher who loved to challenge me in a faculty meeting in front of everybody. So it was like the minute she raised her hand, I like, okay, Tracy. So I always had to tell her, you know, let's talk about that offline. Or let you and I have a one-on-one conversation about that, because I wasn't going to give her the forum to where she could publicly challenge me, because that was not effective for her or for me. Oops, sorry. The other thing that we can do, and you can read these guys, I'm not going to read them to you. We can also look at whether we need to do something verbal. If there's an escalation, we need to do it in writing. Disciplinary, there are times that they have to be directed or given a plan, or we can even use the employment piece. Like I said, sometimes you just have to go there. So we also know that the less conflict we have, there are better results. So just remember, the better able team members can engage, speak, listen, hear, interpret, and respond constructively, the more likely it is for our teams to leverage conflict than to be actually leveled by it. Okay, so that was a whirlwind tour of conflict, guys. I know you feel like I'm so equipped now to go out there and handle this. But like I said, we'll talk some more in depth about it in the next coming meetings. Okay, so it is 6:28. What questions do you have? I know everybody's like, we're really done tonight. You've so overwhelmed our brains with information. Okay, well then I'm going to go ahead and give you a whole 2 minutes of your life back that you didn't expect. And if you do have other questions, guys, either post them in the instructional, the virtual office, or you can always email me, or we can talk about them next week at the beginning. Okay, so I'm going to end for you guys. Stacy, have fun at your livestock show. I hope everybody has a great rest of your week, guys. Thanks. Talk to you later.